Hey y'all, this is Lauren Akins, and welcome to the Live in Love podcast. So each week, I'll be sitting down with friends and family and getting to discuss all the different areas of our lives where we get to live in love. And we've got some behind-the-scenes things we're going to get to share with you, things you may not know, even if you've already read my book, Live in Love.
And I'm Annie Updowns, and I'm really excited to be here with Lauren and to get to be a part of this really special show. Make sure you've subscribed so you don't miss a single episode. And if you're new today, go back and check out the first 3 that have already released. They are really great. Lauren's book, Live in Love, has just released in the paperback edition. It is out now, and you should get a copy. You can pick up your paperback copy of Live in Love at your favorite local bookstore or wherever you love to buy books. And today, Lauren, we're talking about living in love in marriage. So who is your special guest?
Well, you would never expect it, but today we're going to get to sit down with my husband of the year, Thomas Rhett, to get to talk about what it's like, at least for us, to live in love in marriage.
Lauren, let's go. Today, we're talking about marriage.
We are. And I brought someone who knows marriage really well with me. Hey, honey.
Hey, honey. At least I try to. Yes. Thank y'all for having me. I feel
Thanks
nervous
for
for
being
some
here.
reason.
You should be.
Wow.
No,
Oh.
yeah, I'm sure.
I was like going to dig in, and she's like, you should be.
Oh, no.
It's okay. You know my feelings anyway. Wear my heart on my sleeve. So
Yeah. I mean, we've gotten into like some things about Thomas Rhett even before today.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Please fill me in.
Oh, we might.
Lauren, will you start by, I'm going to ask you both to answer this question. Tell me what you love about being married to him.
How much fun we have. I mean, our relationship started as a friendship. So I think that has always been a part of who we are, and that has continued into marriage. So that's probably like the longest relationship we've had together is our fun relationship. I feel like every one of these episodes is just going to go back to Jesus at some point, but I can't look at our marriage without acknowledging the work of God in our life. And that's what I most love about him, is that he allows the Lord to speak into his life and to be the Lord of our marriage, and acknowledge that we're together because we both trusted that God was going to put us where we were supposed to be, and thankful that he gave us each other. But marriage would be really hard if this, the things I'm sure we'll get into today, through like the ups and the downs, it would be really hard to go through the valleys without having that common ground of knowing what we believe and kind of where we fall back on. And even in the good times, like even in the celebrating, I think it's so cool that we have that common heart. So like the joy that we feel, the pain that we feel, the love that we feel, even in like the confusion and like the choices that we're having to make as a married couple or with our kids, or even like I've had personal stuff going on recently that I think he's able to speak that truth as my husband into my life. And because his heart is rooted in truth, he's able to speak wisdom into my life that I really need to hear. And so he is a friend to me, but he's also a leader for me and for our family. I mean, we also have our bad moments too.
Yeah. No, I love being married to Lauren for so many reasons, and I will second just the fact that we just have a blast together. Even when we're not having a blast, I still have a blast somehow.
Oh.
And, I do think that is rooted in what you said, just being friends for so long. Like, I think that when we got married, obviously when you get married, there's a bunch of discovering to do. I think when you go from a friendship to a dating relationship into marriage, you learn stuff about marriage until you die. There is no moment where you go, oh, I figured you out. That's just pretty impossible.
Sorted, got
Especially
it.
for someone as complex as my wife is. It is.
Thanks, honey.
But also, like, I love being married to somebody that I can share literally anything with. And I think that took me a long time to understand. Like, I think there were certain parts of my life where I was like, maybe she doesn't need to hear this from me, And I felt like the more I held stuff in and felt shame or like guilt for bringing things up that I struggle with as a man, and then I would bring them up and she'd be like, well, yeah, I'm sure a lot of people do. And I was like, well, that was easy, And so I think there's I think there's a lot of men that are terrified of their wives in a maybe not in a, I'm scared that whatever is going to happen, but I think a lot of men feel a lot of shame, and I would say, like, I'm in a Bible study with a bunch of guys, and we talk about shame being the root of just complete and utter destruction for your friendships, for marriage, for the way that you view yourself with the Lord. And my wife does such a fantastic job of just eliminating shame in my life, because my shame quickly turns to guilt, and my guilt turns to embarrassment, and my embarrassment turns to escaping.
Yeah, hiding.
You know what I mean? Like, not even in solitude, but in straight isolation.
Wow.
And so, yeah, let's just dive right in. But no, I think just being married to someone that is obviously your wife, but also someone who, even if we weren't married, I think we would choose to hang out with each other, you know? But yeah, I mean, we've been married 8 years now, and I feel like every year, you know, some are better than others. But I would say that this year, for sure, 8 years in, we have discovered, I think, what it means to, like, really put Jesus at the center. And that's what you vow, right? You know, everybody on the day they get married, they're like, we want to put God first, you know, and I don't think you really understand what that means till you kind of experience some stuff with each other. And having kids will definitely change that, you know what I mean? I think, and
if you don't have him first, you
Yeah.
realize it pretty dang quick.
Yeah, and I think, you know, a lot of people, when they have kids, just immediately put all their stock in their kids. And I think a lot of people forget that they're still married. It's almost like this, well, it's all about kids, and then it's us, and then it's God. And I think when you can actually flip that and go, truly is God first. I think for a while I was like, well, no, it's got to be Lauren first. You know what I'm saying? Like, she's the one that I see every day. But that was a roundabout way of answering your question.
That's very good.
Yeah.
I'm wondering, one of the things Lauren said is you let God be the Lord of your marriage, and that you lead like that. Like, what does that look like on a Wednesday? Like, what does it actually look like to be leading in your marriage and letting God lead you in your marriage?
Yeah. You know, most days I don't feel like I am leading in our marriage. And the more that I've talked to a bunch of guys, I think a lot of men feel the same way. Especially, you know, I've been like, my wife leads me in so many ways, and my wife helps me become disciplined in so many ways. And I'm sure y'all have talked about, but we did, and our church does this thing where you fast for the whole month of February, and my wife kind of influenced me to fast from my snooze button, which is a random thing to fast from.
I started fasting from it, and it was a pretty good fast for me.
Yeah, it's a lot harder than you think it would be. Like, I think when you think of fast, you're like, all right, I'm not going to eat anything for 25 days.
Yeah, which would be way harder than fasting from our snooze button.
Right.
Yeah.
But, you know, I think when I think about fasting, I think about things that do take control of me, and sleeping is something that I cherish a lot. And so I noticed her, you know, getting out of bed at 5 o'clock, you know, even before the fast started. And I was like, geez, like
5 o'clock?
Well, the baby wakes up usually in the 6 o'clock hour, but we leave her in her bed till 7.
Yeah.
But I mean, get up, brush your teeth, kind of get dressed for the day.
Like coffee.
Shower if you're able to, Lord willing.
Yeah.
Drink a cup of coffee and then sit down and have some quiet and like pray or read or whatever it is you want to do at that time. But that's really the only time that I have.
Yeah. But I will say that, like, that whole month of February was one of the closest months I've ever felt with the Lord. And I think the more that I'm intentional about getting into the Word, or even not, just reading a book or journaling, or we have like a very small strip of woods next to our house, and I've been reading this book called Becoming a King, which made me want to carry a knife in my pocket and, you know, chop wood and, like, do a bunch of manly things. And I was like, man, I think that Lauren's going to look at me today when I'm chopping this wood, and she'll be like, God, what a hunk, you know. And so in the morning sometimes I literally will just pace through the woods. I feel the Lord so much more present when I'm just out in it, you know. And so through the course of February, I was getting up with her around 5 or 5:30, and then when our fast ended, I feel like, I was telling this to my small group the other day, it felt like I'd been training for a marathon, and I ran the marathon, and now it's time for me just to eat pizza for 6 months.
Wow.
You know what I'm saying? It's like, it was great, and then there's a part of me that goes, okay, I did it.
Done.
And then, you know, a couple nights ago, the guys and the girls actually got back together, because we'd done separate for the last, 4 months or so. And we got back together, and I immediately felt this shame of our group that we didn't do as good of a job as the girls did alone. Wow. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And the next morning I woke up, and I was reading this part of this book, and it was just talking about how, you know, when a man and a wife are, like, actually it's good to grow separately too, but it's also great to grow together. And I kind of attacked Lauren just by saying, honey, why don't you ever invite me to pray? Or like, I feel like you kind of empty your tank on your small group and there's nothing left for me and all this kind of stuff. And what I meant to say was, can we start doing some of this together? Because it's like, I don't know. I think I'm an entertainer. I think Lauren likes to entertain in many ways. And so like it's easy in your small group to kind of be the guy that's like, yeah, I've got some really great things to say in this small group. But when you finally get into your marriage, it's like, oh gosh, what do I say? How do I lead? How do I do this? And I think there's so much of me that doesn't allow the Lord into that, and it's like me trying to just lead by my own will, to be like the man of the house and like all that kind of stuff. But in many ways, Lauren has led me to be such a more disciplined human and such a more patient dad and more patient husband and better friend. And I just watch how she is constantly texting her small group or like calling people, and like, Lauren has become a preacher in many ways. Like, you know what I mean? It'll be like we're on our way to a date and somebody will call her and she'll be like, I'm sorry. And then she's on the phone for an hour and a half with somebody just spitting truth left and right, and no, it's been really incredible to watch Lauren grow, so much over this season and just getting so much more in tune with the Spirit and actually listening and actually canceling the noise out and being able to, just to trust in that faith, and I think that's one of the hardest things to do is just to kind of step off that mountain and hopefully, that God's going to catch you. So I try to lead the best I can, but I do feel like many days Lauren leads me. So.
What do you say, Lauren, to some of our friends listening want their husbands to talk more about God than they do?
I think in any circumstance I find myself where I'm like, I wish this was different, or I wish we had more meaningful conversations, or I wish there was an opportunity for me to have to tell him how I feel, or just to start the conversation about God, or for him to start that conversation. Usually when I've gone through those moments, not even just with Thomas Rhett, but just anything in life, when I'm going through stuff with friends or family, a lot of times I'll pray that God will give me that open door to start the conversation, or I'll pray that he will put someone in their life to encourage them in that way. And a lot of times I pray that God will reveal himself in a new way to that person so that the conversation can get started and their heart is like open and ready to learn and talk about it. And then another thing that I do is I go to my people who pray for me and my family, and I just kind of share with them what I'm going through, whether it's in marriage or with other circumstances, just that they will also be interceding, because I do believe that where you have more people praying in agreement in the Spirit, that is where the Lord starts to move. And if you're praying in agreement with his will and in agreement with what Jesus is praying for that person, you're unstoppable at that point. Mm-hmm. And so, I think you turn it back over to God and just say, this is what I know would glorify you, and this is what I know is your heart for this person. So let's work together in the Spirit to pray for this person and help those doors open up. And sometimes that does mean one of the wives in the group would go, oh my goodness, this person, such and such, just said that they wanted to get lunch with them, and so maybe I'll connect them. That would be a great, like you start to see where God starts to connect the dots a little bit. I think you just have to let God do it, because he will, but you have to believe that he'll do it. But I do think you need a community around you to also surround that need in prayer, because prayer with multiple people in agreement is much more effective. And it might take time. A lot of times it does. But you have to be patient in God's timing and just leave it in the Lord's hands. But I also would encourage them to not shy away from like the hard conversations. If that's a conversation they want to have with their husband or their boyfriend, then pray for an opportunity to do that, and then have the courage to have the conversation. Because a lot of times what I've found is I'll pray for an opportunity and then it will show itself a few different times. And I'll let the moment pass by because I'm nervous.
Yeah.
Or because I'm like, well, what if I don't have the right words? What if this goes the wrong way? Or we just had a fight 10 minutes ago. This is going to sound ridiculous coming out of my mouth now.
Yeah.
And that's just the enemy to try to discourage you from the open door that God's given you. And somebody told me the other day that the analogy of like the man drowning in the water or whatever and praying praying that God would save him. And then like a boat drives by and is like, hey man, do you need help? And he's like, no, I prayed for God. He's going to help me.
Right.
And then like a plane flies over and like drops a float. And he's like, no, I don't need that float. God's going to help me. And whatever it may be. And then he dies and goes to heaven and God's like, dude, I tried to help you. You didn't take it.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of times the way that God helps or reaches back out can look very differently than how we would expect it to look. But that's just going back to knowing the voice of God and knowing him in your life. And if you know his voice and you know when he's nudging you to do something, he'll give you that opportunity. Mm-hmm. But it's your job to have the courage to take it and to be faithful in obeying what he's asking you to do at that point.
Right.
And to let him manage that outcome. I think I've said this before, but it's not our job to manage the outcome of what we do and what happens after we obey. It is our job to obey and let God manage the outcome. Shame, guilt, fear, feeling like you're not good enough, all of those things are feelings that when you start asking God to do things, all of those things start flooding. Because that's what the enemy will use, is to keep you paralyzed and keep you from speaking or doing what God 100%. Wants you to do. But it might take time.
TR, one of the things that stands out to me about what she said is getting other people involved. And y'all really do excel. I mean, we've talked to your family. We've talked to Grace about your small group.
Yeah.
Y'all really do excel in letting community in. How has
sure.
community made you a better husband?
Man, in many ways. But I will start that conversation by saying I do think that you can overindulge in community too.
Oh, go there.
You can. I feel like
he's speaking to me. That's what he's doing. We're having this
is what this actually was for.
On the mic.
No, I think if you're surrounded with people that are life-giving and people that truly do love you for who you are and not because of what you do, those people, you can never have enough of those people, But at the same time, I do think, like, even when our small group comes over, it's usually after we've hosted 6 birthday parties, like in a row, And one of Lauren's greatest and worst attributes is that she feels so hard for people, and she also wants to make sure that everyone in the world is so celebrated. You know what I mean? And it's such a blessing. But at the end of the day, you can see her just worn to a frazzle.
Oh, wow.
And so I think community in many ways, like I think sometimes a healthy community are the people that come over and say, hey, why don't y'all take a beat? Why don't we host small group at our house next week or something? Because I do think that you can, like I said, overindulge in that community. But like I said, with people that are life-giving, like there's many times on Monday nights where I go, I just don't have it. My tank is empty, working all day, blah, blah, blah. And then you get into conversation and all of a sudden you leave fulfilled. And it's just amazing how the Lord can work like that, in moments that you I wouldn't say dread is the word, but like in moments where you're like, I'd love to just get in the bed and crush Netflix for 2 hours. And when you actually, do go into those moments, such as small group or such as like, bringing an old friend over to the house, or like going to dinner with a friend you haven't seen in a while, and you come back,
having our family over,
and you leave going, it was much needed.
Yeah.
And so.
So how do you know that line? What's the line between pushing past when you're tired and recognizing that you're over?
Yeah. Well, I'm still figuring it out because I'm trying to decide how much of that is selfishness in me. I'm also trying, because then when you read Scripture and you look at how Jesus spent his alone time, it was like Jesus had been walking 60 miles, with his people, and he's been feeding 5,000 people, and he's been healing this blind man and healing this man's ears, and then all of a sudden his disciples are getting in their tents at midnight, and he's like, well, now it's my time to go be alone.
Right.
And I just can't imagine at the end of the day, I was telling her the other day, like, I think the Lord has been waking me up, like, whether it's my dog Cash barking at 2 o'clock in the morning or whatever it is, and I'll get up and I'll be wide awake.
Wow.
And I'll be like, I can feel the Lord being like, right now. And I'm like, no, please. and I'll go back to bed. And then I'll have missed, like Lauren said, I missed the boat. I missed the plane. I'll ask for it. I'll be like, God, speak to me tonight in my dreams. Give me a vision. Give me this stuff. And he's like, all right, I've woken you up 3 nights in a row at 2:40.
No.
Yeah. Well, I mean, maybe not in a row, but it's always been in the 2 o'clock hour. And I'll get up and I'll go to the bathroom and I'll be like, well, I'm wide awake. Maybe, and then I'll go through this whole justification thing in my brain, and I'll be like, well, if I read now, then when
I'll never fall back asleep.
when my kids wake up at 6:30, then it's just go time. You know what I mean? And then I'm like, well, maybe I'll just go back to bed and then set my alarm for 5, and then I'll sleep till 7:45. That's how it's worked this last couple weeks. But to fulfill your question that you asked, I think community is so important because I think we're just meant to be in community. I mean, I think there's a reason that Jesus surrounded himself with disciples. Not that he needed them, but I think he also used them to kind of also build each other up, And so for us, like I've ever used the word small group a ton, but it's just been one of the most life-giving things in the world, and especially not only in marriage, but just like us for men. We do talk about marriage quite a bit, but we also talk about how we just suck. You know what I mean? Not only as husbands, but like as dads and as friends. And it feels like every Tuesday I wake up, I'm like, okay, I'm ready to go. But then every Monday night, we just feel like it's almost like we're under spiritual attack after small group is over. It's like every Monday night, Lennon will wake up at 10 o'clock screaming.
Although
and I'm
this
just like,
past
what
Monday,
happened?
We recognized it, and we were like, it's every Monday.
Yeah.
The enemy is attacking because we have such fruitful moments on Monday nights. And so Grace and Davey stayed late this past Monday, and Lennon was screaming at 9:45, and I was like, no, it's starting so much earlier. And I was like, wait. And so I went and got her out of bed and came back in and was telling Grace, I was like, we think that she's not sleeping because of like spiritual reasons.
Yeah.
And Grace was like, great, let me pray for her. And so all 4 of us were around Lennon and prayed over her sleep, and she slept like a champ that night. So there's a lot around our community that I think obviously the enemy does not want that to be fruitful and does not want us to meet and does want to make us feel tired or like our tanks are empty. We can't host again tonight.
Sure.
But I will kind of speak a little bit more into that. Like, I need to do a better job at prioritizing. Like, for me, small group on Monday night is non-negotiable because that pours into my personal life. It pours into my spiritual life. It pours into my marriage. It pours into me being a mom. It allows me to confess a lot of things that God's been putting on my heart to confess, and then to like get that out, the dark parts of my heart out into the light, and for them to speak into that and pray over me if need be. And even just this morning before I came in here, Grace literally, I've been going through some stuff, which I also believe is spiritual. And Grace called me and she was like, can I just pray over you before you go into your podcast? And so like, to me, that's friendship, that's community, that's marriage. Thomas Rhett's had to pray over me before many times over different things that I've been walking through. And, so for me, community is one of those things on our list of things, quote unquote, to do that is non-negotiable because it brings so much life and brings us closer to the heart of Jesus. As far as hosting birthday parties, someone else could host the birthday party. Like, I need to get better at saying, hey, I want to celebrate you, but can we do it somewhere else this week because I don't have it in me. But that's the Gregory coming out in me,
yes.
as we have talked.
And it's a good thing.
It is. It is a good thing, but it also, at the end of the day, Satan uses busyness.
Mm-hmm.
He is an opportunist in that way.
It's one of my favorite quotes. If the devil can't make you sin, he'll make you busy.
Yeah, well, busyness is 100% one of my greatest downfalls.
Yeah.
But it also brings me a lot of joy in some of the things that we do. But I need to do a better job, and he's always telling me that, God, but also Thomas Rhett, that I need to like take a step back. God actually told me, which has kind of been a revelation, not kind of, it was. I was holding Lennon. This might go too deep, but I was holding Lennon, rocking her during nap time one day. Like, I don't know.
Do you already know this story?
Do I? I don't know.
This
is part of us growing together, right?
Yes. Yeah. I was rocking Lennon. The girls are at school. I don't know where Thomas Rhett was. Nobody was in the house except for me and Lennon. I was rocking her, and I was just in her nursery, and it was dark, and she was like so peaceful, and I just was like loving just holding her and just being quiet and alone. And so I just started praying, and as I was praying, God showed me myself on like the shore of a beach, and I had my toes in the water like I love to do. And as I was standing there, the waves were coming in, and like, small little waves that were like peaceful and sweet. And then another one that was like a little bit bigger. And then the next one got bigger. And then the next one got even bigger. And then it kind of got like a little more violent. And then as I was standing there with my feet planted in the sand, the next one knocked me over. And then I got back up. And then as I got back up, the next one knocked me over. And before I could get back up, the next one knocked me over and I was like down and not able to get back up. And I could see in the distance like a tsunami wave coming. And it was like, this is going to crush me. As I was praying through that, I was like, what in the world? Like, what does that mean? Like, and I felt him say, if you don't start saying no, it is going to crush you.
Wow.
Like, you've got to start putting up boundaries and putting up walls that protect your heart, protect your family. You're saying yes to way too much. Mm-hmm. And you got to slow down. But as I was praying through that, I like felt the weight of that. And then I started to get really sad and just like, okay, so what is that? Like, okay, I need to start saying no. Like, what do you have for me in this? How are you going to help take care of me through this? What do I need to do? And he put Mo on my heart, who is our assistant, who we hired right before Willa Gray came home, like right as I got pregnant with Ada James. And I remember when we hired her, I was like, I don't know what I'm going to need an assistant for. I mean, like, it's just 2 kids.
Right.
I can do this. We did not have a nanny at this point. And the second my kids came home, and even through my pregnancies, I was so sick that when Thomas Rhett was gone, it was a lifesaver having Mo around to help me out and just to help, honestly, if nothing else, just to help take care of me while I was sick as a dog. He told me that he gave me Mo as, her name is Maureen, we call her Mo. He gave me her as a firewall. And wow. She does have this sense about her that when things come up, she's like, I don't know that you should do this, or I think this weekend is too busy for you to be taking this on. Why don't you ask someone else if they can do it? Or I will tell her what I've got going on, and she's like, give me that. And I'm like, I want to do it. She's like, no, let me do it. You need to go do whatever it may be. And so used to, I would push back because I'm not very good at asking for help or receiving help, and I would push back on her. But since he has told me that, I'm very careful that when she feels in her spirit, like, hey, this isn't smart, or I don't feel good about you doing this, or yes, I think you should take this job. This sounds like a great opportunity, or whatever it may be. I'm very sensitive to what she's saying, and now I know, on top of me loving her so much and just having a friendship there and how much my kids love her, like I love her being in my life, but now there's like an even like holier purpose to our relationship, and it's God protecting me so that I'm able to be who he's called me to be in the kingdom. And so I see where he takes care of me in that, but that's still something that I just struggle with. I just struggle with wanting to do it all and be at everything. And sometimes I kid myself and think that I can do it all until I crumble. But it is a real struggle for me. And that's something that Thomas Rhett, I think, gets most frustrated because he's just like, he's able to say no a lot easier than I am. And so that's one way.
Why are you able to say no easier?
I don't really know. I think there's a part of me, there's kind of been this shift in me, because I haven't been great at saying no a lot in the ast, but I will say since like maybe 2019, I had this shift in me that was just like, there's just things that like I just used to view as so important, whether it was goals or things I wanted, physical or whatever it was, and then somewhere along the way it was just like, that doesn't interest me in the slightest anymore. And maybe it's turning 30. I don't know. Or maybe the Lord has like really shown me specifically what my priorities should be. And not to say I don't struggle with that a lot, because I do have FOMO pretty good, but I have FOMO with certain people or certain events, but not in the way that I used to be like, I need to be at everything. I need to say yes to everything. I need to do this because if I don't, somebody else will, you know? So I've been very fortunate for sure in this last decade, but there's definitely a little bit of trauma, I think, just from early days of touring and being on the road. And man, I've struggled with comparison so bad my whole life, you know. And there came a point in 2019 where I finally was just looking straight and not left and right. And I still struggle with it, don't get me wrong. It's like one of my biggest flaws as a human is to look at what other people are doing and be like, oh, I need to work harder because I got to beat them, or I got to do this because if I don't do it, they are going to, and it's going to crush me. But I feel like Lauren and our manager, Virginia, has been really good at just kind of being like, hey, like, you're on your own path. And especially when it comes to us, I think what I've craved so much, it's weird in 2020 we didn't work at all, but we worked a ton. I think what I craved the most in 2020, and it frustrated the crap out of me, that I was like, how are we not busy, but yet me and Lauren have not been on a date in 6 months?
Wow.
You know what I'm saying? And so then we started to do this thing, like every Wednesday night, me and Lauren went downstairs, built a fire, and watched a movie. And that was like our date, because we really couldn't go anywhere early on during quarantine. But like, I think that's still one of my biggest frustrations is I'm like, how do we get alone? How do we do that? And me and Lauren had a pretty rough argument the other night. And I was just like, why don't you make time to do this? And then she looked at me and she was like, why don't you make time to do it? And I sat there and I go, well, because you kind of run things. Like you have the agenda. You know what's happening. And therefore I feel inadequate to plan anything. And then it was like a big, slap in the face. It was like, hey, you can do this. And so I think there's part of me that will say no to certain things because I would rather at least be at home with my family and or try to do something with Lauren and I that night. And that has become a priority to me more so than birthdays or drinks with friends or, whatever it is that you feel like you kind of just need to be at, So I don't know where the shift came, but it just kind of like literally one day vividly, it was just like, there's just things that I just don't value as important anymore. And now these things that I didn't value as important are the most important.
And that's where he leads me because I get so caught up in, well, I need to do this, I need to do that. And oftentimes what gets left on the back burner is him and I and our relationship. So he's able to lead me in that and go, yes, I know you want to celebrate this person. Yes, I know that we've been invited to this dinner and we wanted to go to this restaurant. Yes, I know that little kid's birthday party is important. Can someone else take Ada James? What about me and you? And so I've been able to be like, crap. Okay, you're right. I'm sorry.
Which I don't hear that term very often, which is very refreshing. So.
Which one? Crap or I'm sorry?
I'm right.
Oh, I'm right.
Yeah.
I'm right. I mean, TR, I'm just wondering, as I'm hearing your story, where it feels like the Lord is intercepting your mental health and all the work y'all are doing emotionally.
Yeah.
Your just growing upness, as we're all just growing up a little more every day. Your increased spiritual depth.
For sure.
Making you a leader who protects your family.
Yeah.
Am I seeing that right?
I will receive that. Thank
Yeah.
you. Yes.
That's what it feels like when you zoom out. It looks like you've been doing all these things individually that to be done that are making you become a king.
Yeah.
Yeah.
At least being able to, and this is me taking a direct quote out of this book, but being able to consecrate my kingdom to the Lord.
Yeah.
One of our friends, Landon, the other night was just saying how it took him so long to even dive into this book because he hated the concept of what it means to become a king. And it's like, there's only one king. I can't be the king. But I think the Lord has given us that right to be able to build a kingdom that is all consecrated to Him. You know what I mean? Whether it's your finances or your kids go to school or your car or your grass or whatever it is, like it's all been given to you, but it's like, how do you yield that to Him? Because there's a big portion of this book that talks about excavating your kingdom, right? Like you can't, like if you imagine New York City, there's not a whole lot of places to build. And so if you wanted to build something super cool, you would have to tear some stuff down.
Right.
And so I think this season has been me learning how to excavate and build like permanent structures where there was a bunch of structures built on sand, whether that was like faith in my career or faith in myself or faith that I could do it all or faith that it wouldn't get done unless I'm involved in it. And the freedom in giving that to God, not that you don't have to work, not that the Lord's not going to put stuff on you like, hey, I do think you should do this. But just the freedom to actually believe the statement of this is in God's hands it's like taking a squat rack off your shoulders. You know what I mean? You're just like kind of just walking and you're free now. And just kind of realizing that truly no matter what happens in your life, you can get through those times, But it took me, 30 years to get there. And there's been moments of my life where I was like, man, me and God are tight. We talk 2 times a week, And I'm like, what if me and Lauren talk 2 times a week? Would we be tight? Probably not. And so when you start to view your relationship with God and the way that you view it in your marriage, you're like, I spend 17 hours a day with my wife. Even if we're not talking, we're with kids or we're doing something together. And I'm like, man, I give the Lord an hour a day, and I'm really consciously trying to use Paul's words and try to understand what being in constant prayer means, because I don't think it has to be on your knees 24 hours a day, but you can be forever in conversation with the Lord. Even just speaking Jesus' name in your head to me is prayer.
That's right.
Yeah.
And there's so much power in that name and the power that it gives us over evil and just all that kind of stuff. So, yeah, I think just taking that kingdom and consecrating it to what what He has in store for it is just super important.
It's good, honey.
It's really good.
You know?
Preach.
Thanks.
Pastor Thomas Rhett. Lauren, 10 years into your marriage, 8 years in, but let's round up.
Yeah.
What's the next decade look like?
I don't think that we're done having kids. Honey?
It's a conversation we have every day.
So that may mean she's right.
I don't think we're done having kids. So I don't imagine the chaos is going anywhere.
Yeah.
But I love this new place that we're in where we are in everything having to depend on each other and Jesus through our life, because it's so, just like what you were saying, it's so much easier when the weight is off your shoulders and you can enjoy it and you can see the little blessings and the moments in your day that are like, oh, this is such a gift. Or even just getting down and putting whatever work that we think that we need to be doing off to the side and just getting down and playing with the kids. Or one of my favorite things that we do is get in our bed after baths and turn on a Disney movie and pop popcorn and put marshmallows in it. And
marshmallows and popcorn?
Yeah, my kids
Let's
love
go.
Yeah, it's really good.
and popcorn.
The little tiny ones?
Yes, and they kind of melt because
Okay.
the popcorn's hot.
You better preach that too.
Yum,
Let's go.
it's yum.
Okay.
Mackenzie came up with that, or maybe Mo. I don't know who. I did not come up with marshmallows and popcorn, but my kids love it. It's just like one of the sweetest moments that we get to have when we're all together and the world's kind of like turned off. And I think 2020 really taught us how to be without going, because so much of our life is on the go. But I do love the travel that we get to do with our kids. So I think over the next decade, I don't want to lose that adventure side of our marriage. That is so much fun. Like, adventure is so deep in my heart and the way I was raised. I mean, after talking to my dad, you know that adventure is like deep in the Gregory DNA. And so I love that we get to go on adventures together. So I see adventure in the next 10 years, but I also see, a lot of downtime with our kids and carving out that time in our calendar for date nights, but also family nights where nobody else is in the house and we're able to just take in the moment that we have, because, eventually you and I will be empty nesters. And then, I don't want to look back and go, man, I really wish that I had worked less or
For sure.
or traveled less so that I could have had those moments more and remember those moments more at home with our family and our kids. So I see a lot of adventure. I see maybe not a lot more kids, but a couple more kids.
Yeah. Maybe one more. Yeah.
And just fun, just growing older together, because we ain't old yet, honey.
Well, we're getting there.
Nah.
My hair's turning gray.
You do have gray hair.
Ada James looked at me yesterday morning. She goes, "Daddy, you're getting old."
Ooh.
And I said, "Why?" She goes, "You have a lot of gray."
Oh, my word. How
Last
does she
night
even
in the
know
bath.
that?
Huh?
How does she know what that means?
I have no idea. But anyway, I embrace it. I'm ready for gray.
It looks good.
I showed Lauren a picture of one of my favorite Instagram influencers, and I said, "This is what I aspire to be right
He's
here."
like fully gray-headed.
Yeah, you
Oh,
know,
yeah. Just in the woods, hunting elk, just being a man.
But he had long
Gray
hair.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I may just dye it. Before
Gray?
before it even goes gray. Just kind of
Lead
get
the
a head
way.
start
Just
on
Go
it.
ahead
Yeah.
and commit.
That's
Okay.
good. TR, one of my favorite authors, John Mark Comer, says you don't
That
plant...
book is incredible. The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry.
Yes.
Yeah.
He's unbelievable.
So good.
You're on the back of it.
I'm on the back of it.
I saw it in our closet.
Yeah, I
if y'all
saw
wanna be-
that.
If
I
you
was
want to be
like-
real friends, we can make that. You would
Annie
love him.
approved.
Yeah.
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 Big time. John Mark, I just adore him. But he says you don't plan how you're going to be when you're 80, when you're 80.
Correct.
So what are you doing right now to be a good husband when you're 80?
Yeah. I think that's one of my biggest fears in life is getting old and looking back, and with regret. It's something that I have to actively work at every day, because I would say I'm a fun dad, but I also am somewhat of a serious dad, and what's funny about, you brought up John Mark Comer, that Becoming a King book was written by Morgan Snyder, who kind of apprenticed under John Eldridge, and there's a lot of quotes
I
from
love John Eldridge.
There's a lot of quotes from Becoming a King in Ruthless Elimination and vice versa. And so I was reading both books at the same time, but there's this quote in there, and I'm sorry to keep quoting these books, but this book's kind of changed my life.
That's good.
And he says, make sure right now to give yourself permission to be young. And I remember like a few years ago, I read this this article about this different new work style that like a lot of people in like New York or in LA are kind of adapting to, where they like work from like 2 a.m. to 5 a.m. and then they get like a power nap, and then they work from like 7 to noon, and then they have like an hour of like free time, and then they work out, and then they start it all over again. It never stops. There is no weekends, you know? And I just feel like I feel like in a roundabout way, that's kind of how I was living. And I was just trying to decipher what it meant to give yourself permission to be young. And I would just imagine that if our faith is supposed to be childlike, then our play should be childlike, you know? And so I don't know why I am this way, but like when Ada James looks at me and she says, "Daddy, will you come play with me?" There's a part of me that goes, "Oh, I don't want to go pretend to be Ken." You know what I'm saying? Like, let's go chop some wood. Let's like go outside or whatever.
Willa Gray will do more of that with you.
Yeah,
Ada
for
James
sure.
wants to be girly, and I
Yeah.
think that's harder for you. Because Willa Gray's like, "Yeah, Daddy, I'll go wherever you want to go." Ada James is like, "Nope, we're playing Barbies."
Yeah. But like in college and high school, I was so good at playing. You know what I mean? Like whether it's flag football with friends or throwing Frisbee or whatever. Like I don't remember the last time I threw a baseball with somebody or threw a football. And so those are ways that I'm trying to actively incorporate into my life to like get on my kids' level. Not that they can't come do stuff that I enjoy with me, but I think like actively what I've been trying to do is the moment my kids say, "Daddy, will you come play with me?" I go, "Yes, what do you want to do?"
Wow.
Like without even hesitating. Even last night I screwed up. Ada James said, "Will you come to the bounce house with me?" I said, "Daddy just needs to sit for a second." And what that meant to me was I'm not going to the bounce house. Does that make sense?
Because it's okay to sit for a second, but you knew the motive.
But I knew.
You knew.
I knew the
right,
motive, and it was
right.
like maybe she'll forget.
Right.
You know, and I don't want to look back in 50 years and be the dad that my kids go, "My dad was a good dad, but we didn't really do much together." You know what I'm saying? And that kind of breaks my heart even talking about it. And so I'm inspired even just having this conversation to like get back to the house, and like I'm just not good with monotony. Like when Lauren's like, "Hey, I'm going to go do my hair. Will you hold linen?" I know what holding linen entails. It is literally following her around the house and making sure she doesn't die.
Yeah.
That is what that entails. Right? Lauren is so good at like, I mean, literally, I'll hold Ada or hold Lennon and walk through the house, and she'll be like, touch this, and I will pass everything she wants to touch because I know that she's going to break something,
Yeah.
or if she wants to hold
You're
the
preaching right
protein.
now.
If she wants to hold the protein bar that's in my hand that I'm like graciously feeding her, she's going to crumble it or give it to our dog Cash. So I'm one of
And
those.
he struggles with his weight, so that's not good.
Yeah.
He
So, like-
struggles. He's got a real thing about his weight.
Yeah, we spend more money on Cash's dog food than we do on our grocery bill, just trying to get him to shed some pounds. But sweet buddy, I'm just not good at monotony, and I don't know why. It's just like, and we talked about this in our small group the other night with like agreements that you make with yourself. But I'm such a pessimist. But I'm not claiming that over myself anymore. I'm not a pessimist, but I can be in my false self, right? And so like, I was even telling her this, like we're going to visit our brother-in-law, my brother-in-law Grayson in Montana, and then we're going from there to one of our friends' house in Hawaii. If I told you, "Hey, do you want to go to Hawaii?" You'd be like, "Yes, that sounds like a blast."
Yes.
You know where my brain went? 9 hours on a plane with a 1-year-old. It's like I can't even get past. I can't even put myself in the position to have fun because I'm dreading getting there. I mean, I literally lose my mind in traffic, in a 30-minute traffic jam. I'm like, can I not just get there? I look at every situation and I see the end result and it looks amazing, but the road to get there is flawed to me.
Yeah.
And then I try to relate that into my path of like, I'm 30 and what's it going to look like when I get to heaven? And I look at this road, right? And I look at 2 more kids on top of 3, and I look at
Oh, he went from 1 to 2 in this very conversation. Okay.
and I look at all this stuff, and I'm like, well, when we have a new baby, it will be great when they're 1, but those first 6 months are going to be tiring as crap. And that's where my brain goes, you know. So it's something I'm having to like really work out of myself. But on the fact of like being young, I think that's where I have to get to as a man. I have to give myself permission to be a kid. Maybe not all day, but I think if you live your whole life in just a seriousness of just the grind and the hustle and the this and the that, and like if your goals are always those places that you get to and you're never fulfilled, what is the point? I've had a lot of goals in my life, and every time I get there, I don't even cherish the goal. I'm just like, what's the next one? And I think we can all probably attest to that in some way. But, you know, I think if you don't give yourself a lot of time, you know, in that book, it talks about the Sabbath a lot in John Mark's book and like what the Sabbath actually means. And like, he's like, we don't order anything on Amazon. We don't get on our phones. We rest and we play. And like sometimes I look at the Sabbath as the complete opposite of that. I mean, if Jesus can rest, if Jesus can sleep in, there's a passage where his disciples had to like wake him up. You know what I mean? And I think you think Jesus just had an internal alarm clock of 3 a.m. He was like, let's freaking go.
Right.
All day. I've got God,
Right.
I'm a man, but I'm kind of not really a man. But he was truly man flesh. And like people get tired and people need to sleep in sometimes. And so I think just giving yourself the grace to be like, I can't be everything for everybody at all times of my life. And so even trying to instill that in our girls, like even when me and Lauren will go to dinner, they'll be like, where are you going? And we're like, we're going to have mommy and daddy time. And just at 5 years old, even though that doesn't make any sense, I think it's just grooming them to hopefully one day with their spouses to be like, we're going to do this too because we watched mom and dad do it. We watched mom and dad kiss. We watched mom and dad hug, even though it's gross at 5 years old or whatever. But I think one day they're going to wake up and be able to be affectionate with their spouse because they watched us be affectionate.
That's right.
It's just crazy because I think I think in your mind you feel like you have your whole life to get it right, but then you're going to be 80, just like you said, and you're like, well, crap, I never really got there, and that's kind of a scary thought. But I think that if you can just take action today and just take, my buddy Rex has a great quote, be where your feet are, and it's just such a great quote, and it might be the hardest thing to do in life is to be where your feet are, and just realize that this is where I am today at 10:25, and I'm going to really enjoy being here and not worry about the drive home, not worry about whatever is going to happen today. This is where I am, and this is all promised. It's 10:25 and 20 seconds on Wednesday the 10th.
Yeah.
So, babe, at the end of every episode, I ask the same question.
Okay.
What does it look like to you in our life today, in our marriage, to live in love in marriage?
Okay. I thought you were about to ask me a funny question.
Sorry. It can be funny.
No, I did an interview yesterday in Europe, and the last question she asked me was if I was a potato chip, what kind of chip would I be?
You can answer that too.
So-
Yeah, what was your answer?
No, I said I would be a jalapeno cheddar Cheeto.
Oh, yum.
So-
Great choice.
Sorry, I did not mean to avoid your question.
That's a great answer, too, though. We need that one, too.
Yeah, that's good.
What does it mean to live in love in marriage? That's the question. Wow. I think living in love in marriage, and at least for you and I pray this over everyone listening who is married or dating or would like to be married one day. I think vulnerability is so key. And the whole cliche of that it's easier for women to be vulnerable than it is for men, I just kind of don't believe in. Like, I don't think that maybe like in the 50s, that was kind of like a stigma that like men don't show vulnerability and men don't cry and men don't confess things to their wife. And the cliche that I think that has been on men and women for so long, it's just got to stop, because I think what it really means to be a man, sure, it means it can be being handy, be able to fix a sink, be able to change oil. Like those, I think those are great manly qualities, right? But I think more so than that, to allow yourself to be vulnerable with your wife is about the most manly thing that you can do.
Wow.
Because it feels not right. I think at least what men have been taught, it's just like, well, save that for your buddies on a Friday night. If you even share that with your buddies on a Friday night, But I think being extremely confessional with your wife, I think you'll be surprised at how she will take that. Because I think I lived in fear for so long about being 100% vulnerable or saying exactly what I meant, knowing that it was probably going to tick her off a little bit. I think for so long I skirted around issues or said like what I thought she really needed me to say or wanted me to say. That doesn't get you anywhere.
Yeah.
So I think that living in love and marriage is like being on the same page of vulnerability with each other and like being as honest as you possibly can be, because there's no way that they can understand you if you're beating around the bush. And it may hurt for a minute. I mean, I think truth can be painful sometimes.
Yeah.
But I think the longer you can live in that truth and that vulnerability, the easier it will become to be able to share the deepest, darkest parts of your heart. I think that's just how Jesus intended, marriage to be.
Amen.
Lauren, what does it look like for you to live in love in marriage?
Well, I just ditto to whatever you said, just from a wife's perspective, but also going along with being honest. Like, I think one thing that we struggle with for a while was me giving him answers to things when he would ask me a question or like say, do you care if I go do this? Or let's go, we're going to do this tomorrow night. Is it cool? Or, hey, I'm going out of town here or we're going to order this food tonight or whatever. And he would be like, how do you feel about that? And I would kind of do the same. And my words back to him wouldn't be 100% truthful. They would be maybe what I wished I felt, but they wouldn't be exactly what I felt. And so I would release him to like go out somewhere with his friends or go on this hunting trip or say, no, you didn't hurt my feelings. I'm fine. And in reality, it did hurt my feelings. Or in reality, no, I don't want you to choose your friends. I want you to choose me tonight, or whatever it may be. And I think over years of counseling and the Lord teaching us about honesty and what that actually means, and letting your yes be yes and your no be no, we've really worked hard and to like kind of work through that past trauma for him, because I would tell him, yeah, it's fine, go do that. And then he would come home and I would like give him down the road about it.
Wow.
And be like, well, or like roll over and not want to talk to him in the bed. There was always that attachment to my answer that he was never sure what version of me he was going to get when he came home. So that's something that we've really worked at to like, I do feel like I've gotten to a place where I'm able to say, you know what? I'm going to be sad if you leave to go on this hunt trip, but I know that you need this for your heart. And I trust that you're going to let me go do something with my girlfriends when I need that. So yes, I'm sad you're leaving. Yes, I'm going to miss you. Yes, I wish you were here, but I want you to go do that. And so I'm allowed to feel what I feel, but in that same moment, allowing yourself to serve your spouse and let your spouse do things that you know are good for them, but might not be something that you would choose to do or that you want in that moment. And it's a selfless decision, letting them go do something that maybe I wish they wouldn't. I wish he wouldn't. But in the same way, he does that for me now too. And I think putting yourself behind your spouse truly in those moments, or like when he leaves his Zen packs all over the house, which are like tobacco-less, what is it, nicotine? I don't even know.
What is the next part of this segment? Addiction? Hello, my name is Thomas, and I'm addicted to caffeine.
No, it just, the things that he does that drives me nuts, the things he leaves over the house, the way that I've said the same thing 7 times. I swear I've said it 7 times, but he still doesn't seem to hear me. Like asking the 8th time, still in love, but being like, hey, honey, I need you to look at me because I know you didn't hear me the first 7 times. Instead of like flipping my lid and getting into a fight in front of our kids. Like there are moments where it's really easy to want to like put them in their place if they've done something wrong to you, or say, no, I don't want you to do that because that's not going to be fun for me. But letting that person, or you just learning how to serve your spouse and to be like, I'm going to put myself behind you and let you take care of yourself. And in doing that, Thomas Rhett has always done that for me, but that was something that was hard for me to learn to do for him. And I think if you're in that situation, I recognized over the years that he put me first in front of himself a lot. And that was something I took for granted. But when it hit me, I was like, whoa, I'm very sorry that that's not something that I made a priority. But it is, if you can both learn to do that, oh my goodness, it just takes so much of the junk out of your marriage. And just being honest and being like, hey, this really hurt my feelings, but I don't think that you meant it that way, but that's how I took it. And then it gives them an opportunity to go, you know that I love you, and that's not what I meant. And it avoids a lot of pain and unneeded suffering. So that's probably one of my biggest ways that I think we're able to live in love and marriage, and we're still working on it.
Yeah. Last quote that I will say from Morgan Snyder. No, there's this whole segment about the chapter is called Taking the Lowest Seat. I think that's a hard thing for me to do because I make a living on being the center of attention. Right. Coming home, I think the reason 2020 was so hard for me is because I've survived off affirmation for 10 years. I think when that is taken away from you, I think one of the last places that you're going to find affirmation is with your children. It's actually quite the opposite. Like last week, Ada James looked at me and she said, Daddy, I thought I told you to get me some orange juice.
And you're like, thank you so much for letting me serve you.
But I think if you can always choose to take the lowest seat in your marriage and take the lowest seat as a parent, I think there's no better way to mimic Jesus than to do that. Yeah. And it's tough to do because there's a lot of times where you want the praise, or you want to have the last word, or you want your story to be cooler than somebody else's. And I even find that with me and Lauren, just to be completely confessional, when Lauren started even writing a book, and we just flipped spots in 2020. I didn't work, and then she has a career. Yeah. And I'm just like, what am I supposed to do now?
Right.
You know what I'm saying? I'm like, well, this is my season to be here. This is your season to be here. And I think you have to like give each other that opportunity to allow each other to have those seasons in their life where someone is doing just or having a lot cooler experiences, or at least in your brain, like they're having cooler experiences or whatever. But it took me a minute to be like, okay, I really am proud of you. It doesn't, like, I think for me, it's like, it doesn't have to be about me for once. Like, even when we were arguing, I would be like, what have I done? And she'd be like, sometimes it's not about what you've done. If you can find a way to take the lowest seat in your marriage at all times, and both of you are doing that together, I think the Lord would bless that so much in your marriage. So that's all I got. Signing out.
Thanks, babe. Thank y'all so much for listening. I love getting to share these conversations with you. If you love this episode, please remember to rate it, review it, and share it with your friends. Also, you can pick up your copy of the paperback edition of Live in Love that's available now. And I hope you'll join us for our next episode of the Live in Love podcast, where we'll be talking about what it means to live in love in purpose.